Welcome to the October 2024 edition of the Authors Showcase Series, presented by the South Florida Writers Association, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote literary arts and support writers. Today's guest is ANITA Mitchell. ANITA is the author of the book God Took My Arms, but He Gave Me This Gift, about Abbas Karimi, who just became a Paralympic two-time silver medalist in the Paris Paralympic Games. ANITA and Abbas are also teammates with Swim Fort Lauderdale. Thank you for joining us, ANITA.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So let's start from the beginning. When did you first realize you were a writer?
Well, that was the class I was best at in school, always, were the English classes. That was easy. Now, the math classes, were torture, but English, very simple. And in seventh grade, I saw the Beatles, and I wrote a
Wow.
story about the Beatles for the school newspaper. And everybody thought that was so good, and I just kept doing it. That was what I like to do. I like to swim. I like to write.
Oh, fantastic. So the Beatles really inspired you. Did you get to see them live or you saw them on
Yes,
TV?
I
Oh my
saw the
goodness.
Beatles live. That was a
Wow.
big deal. So I wrote a story about it and they put it in the school newspaper.
That's great. And then you went on, you wrote for the Miami Herald and you wrote for a lot of newspapers?
I wrote for the Herald as a freelancer. I did.
Okay.
I taught English for years. And after I wrote for some freelance articles for the Herald, and I really liked it, and I just kept going at that point.
That's great. What did you write about for the Herald?
Um, one of them were court stories that I knew about, different cases I knew about, and I would write things about that. I didn't do a lot of it. I went to the graduate program at FIU in
Great.
journalism. And so that was just an outlet to write while I was in journalism school.
That's great. So what did you learn? What did you learn in journalism school? How did that make you the writer you are today?
Well, I went there for graduate classes. I'd been out of it for a while. I graduated college in like 72, and I had a degree in communications, and I taught English for years. And then I wanted to go, once my son was old enough to, come home by himself after school, I really wanted to pursue television. And I went back to school. And it's not that I learned, what I learned in graduate school was updated technology. That was important. And I got contacts of people who worked in media. And through those contacts, I got a job. And I kept that job for 26 years at Channel 7.
Great. That's great. So how different was that writing for television news than writing for newspapers?
Oh, I mean, completely different. You write it in 5 minutes. There's no
Wow.
editing, there's no, massaging it to perfect it. You just bang it out and get it and do it the best you can in 5 minutes. So I learned
And
how to write quickly. I
so
learned
you
how,
learned how to write quickly. So tell me about the process of writing your book. It sounds very interesting. What did you take your journalism, what you learned from journalism, all these years working for WSVN and the Miami Herald and from grad school? Did you use that towards writing a book?
oh, yes, that was crucial and how to do it. I know how to write one way, and it's like a news story. So I wrote the book that way. I wrote the book that way. As a news story, I did a lot of research, a lot of background. When I first got to know Abbas, I already knew as much as was up. I already knew everything I could find about him, so that I didn't ask him questions he had been asked a lot of times, and he appreciated that. And we got to be friends. I liked him, and he liked me. And soon, I had started a blog called Broward People, which I want to get back to. And I would write these micro nonfiction pieces about people that lived in Broward and just tell their story, just tell a story about them in 1,000 words or less. And the point of those stories is that no matter where people are from, they have universal themes in their stories. And extreme drive. That's a universal theme for a lot of situations and a lot of people. So I wrote this micro nonfiction about him, and he liked it because it was from the perspective of a swimmer. I didn't ask him questions that he thought were stupid about swimming, because I was a swimmer too. So after that piece was done, a literary agent had contacted Abbas and said, your story is great. You should really have a book written about it. Do you know anybody who could write that book? And I was the person. That's how I got that project. The coach
Great.
said, the coach knew I had worked for Channel 7 26 years. And he said that I could do it. And so I started doing it. And it was published in April of this year.
Oh, great, great. So what was your writing process? Tell me, did you interview? I mean, you'd already written a little bit about him, 1,000 words, but I assume your book's probably 50 times that.
Oh, yeah, it's 248 pages. The way I did it was I started thinking about what the lead would be. What's the most attention grabbing part of the book? I didn't want to start with, oh, he was born without arms, and then go chronological. I started with the 2020 Tokyo Paralympics, where he was swimming. And at the same time he was getting ready for the 50-meter butterfly, the Taliban was taking over Kabul. And his whole family, 15 people, were there. And they were texting him, and they were sending him videos. And at the same time, he's trying to prepare for a race. So that's how the book starts. And then I backtrack and tell about what it was like coming to Tokyo. And of course, it was during the pandemic. So to take an airplane trip was a whole big, long ordeal. And then, of course, he wasn't an American citizen. So he had refugee papers. So to even get on an airplane was a major production. It's one of the things he's amazed with now that he's an American citizen. When he travels, you scan the passport and go. Takes 5 seconds.
Yeah.
We don't think about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, that sounds fast. So you did a lot of interviews? You swim with him, I guess, but you also, do you know how many hours of interviews you did with him, or?
Oh, I did so many interviews. I talked to other coaches who were at the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. So I would talk to a coach in Athens, Greece, who coached a Paralympic swimmer who was Greek. I talked to people from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, who sponsored Abbas to come to the United States. So sometimes we'd be talking to someone in Greece, the next day I'd be talking to someone in Geneva, Switzerland. A lot of people on the West Coast, in California and Portland. People from Arena Swimwear, who is one of Abbas's sponsors. I talked to them. They're in Portland, Oregon. So I got to talk to a lot of people, and more than once too, to get the information of what it was like for them during this time at the Paralympic Games.
Through this process, how did the book change from how you originally intended it?
It was pretty much how I thought it would be. Start off with a lead and do it chronologically. It didn't require a lot of creative anything, because the story is so amazing that it tells itself. My job was just to document it and do it accurately. But it wasn't that I had to be, oh, I got to be creative here. No, it tells itself.
Did you have a writing process? Is there a routine that you did? Because I assume you're working too during this.
No, I was retired.
You're retired. Okay. 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 So
it was COVID. It was retired. I had just recovering from an illness. I had all the free time in the world.
oh,
And a
great.
computer. So the timing was perfect for me to do this. The process I did, and I think this would help with a lot of people writing things, is although the book was chronological, I didn't write in a chronological way. Some days I would work on the part from Portland, Oregon,
Okay.
because those are the people I had access to. And so once I talked to them, I could do the research then. Other days I would be in Afghanistan about when he grew up. And Abbas was part of the process too, because I gave him the questions in English. He translated it to Dari, which is a derivative like of Farsi. He asked the questions, got the answers, and translated them back to English for me. So I have interviews with his mother and his brothers,
Wow.
and he did that part for me. And then other times I would do Fort Lauderdale because I had access. Of course, I'm here, so I had access to all of that. So I didn't do it in a linear kind of way.
How long did it take from the time the publisher agreed to take you on to publication? What was the time span of all this?
Well, that wasn't linear either. At first, I had this literary agent that approached me, and oh, she promised us, our own apartment in Paris when he makes the Paris Paralympics and
Sounds
all this
nice.
stuff. However, she never queried any publishers who would be interested in our book.
Hmm.
She had represented Khaled Hosseini, the author Khaled Hosseini. I mean, he's a big deal, but he's a fiction writer. This isn't a fiction book. This is a sports book. So it was the wrong people that she was asking. However, I didn't want to be so presumptuous to think that I knew better than she did how to do this. It didn't seem right to me. And time was ticking. I mean, that 24 Paralympics and Olympics was coming up, and I wanted it completed and published way before that. And finally, we got to another publisher who was very interested and who knew about Abbas, who published only sports biographies, and it was a much better fit. So we had to just kind of let that go and go with the new people. So when they took it on, it was pretty much written. I just had to go through it and update things and edit it. But I'd say a year,
Wow.
year and a half.
It's quick work, quick work. And did Abbas was Abbas like a collaborator? Did you have complete freedom to write this, or what
He knew
was
what I
the
was doing. He knew what I was doing.
okay?
We had kind of, I saw him all the time. I had access to him, and we would talk on the phone. We did it on the phone all the, to be efficient. We did it on the phone. I gave him the questions in advance so he could think about it, and so he was a collaborator in that way. I mean, this is a biography of his life.
Sure. Do you have a plan for another book now that you've done the hard work of finishing and bringing it out to the world? Do you have any
Well,
ideas for
maybe,
another one?
the book ends where he starts talking. He says, my next goal is Paris. Well, he did go to Paris. He did do that. He did win 2 silver medals in the Paris Paralympic Games.
Wow,
He did have me and some other people that he's close to at the games, watching him get those silver medals.
that's incredible.
Um, there's a project I would like to do that's my own project, is get back to that whole Broward people concept of doing the micro nonfiction and do a book about different people in Broward, and maybe do it as a book, do it as a blog, but do it as a book. That way I could use my photography skills and do these 1,000-word pieces, which would also free me up from sitting at a computer for endless hours because of the pandemic. It's not the pandemic anymore. I'm recovered from surgery. I don't have
Oh,
to
good.
be sitting here. If I can do the short pieces, then I can have a life and I can do this. So that's sort of the
Great.
plan. Do the Broward people book. Do a book. Make it a coffee table book. Get an
There
angel
you go.
investor to
There you
invest.
go.
Use it
Wait,
as a
do they
tour.
exist? Yeah.
I mean,
And
you know,
are they still online? Is this Broward? Are your Broward people? Can people still find them?
not yet. I haven't put the site back up, but that's
Okay, okay.
kind of my, I didn't want to focus. I can't focus on like the blog and the book. I have to do one thing. I'm not
Okay.
very good at multitasking. I don't do
Who was the most interesting Broward person besides the boss that you wrote about in that
the boss definitely taps it off. Evander Holyfield, the
oh
boxer.
wow.
He lived in Hollywood for a while, and I went to his boxing gym to meet him. He was fascinating. He was fun.
Oh,
He was a lot of fun. They're all fascinating, whether it's somebody famous like Evander Holyfield or a crack addict that I met, a woman that was a crack addict, and she rehabilitated herself and got a job and made her life good. She was fascinating. A woman that hunts alligators with five
wow.
guys. They go alligator hunting and they skin the alligators, and she collects the meat and starting a cookbook about how to cook alligator meat, and makes wallets out of alligator skin and jewelry out of alligator bones and teeth. I mean, that's fascinating stuff. Yeah, they're all equal. They really are all equally as fascinating in different ways.
Great.
So I'd like to get back to that.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a lot of fun. And you swim, you say you swim a lot. Does that help you with your writing? Does
Yeah,
swimming, you get some good ideas while you're swimming or?
always. That's the yin yang. I don't think you can just write and do nothing else. Some people cook, some people knit, some people shop, some people just, collect things. Some people like to clean, but it's got to be some kind of yin yang, because while you're doing the other thing, you're thinking about what you're going to write, and it helps. And for me, swimming was always the place where I'd figure things out.
Great.
So I'd
And
work on
and
this book while I was swimming in my head.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, what's your swimming routine? What's your swimming routine that you do
Um, every other day. I
every
don't
other
swim
day?
every day. I'm too old to do it every day. It'd be too hard on my shoulders. So I'll do the gym or yoga and then swim in between. And I've done
Great.
this for years, for years. And now that I'm on that swim team, it's all of a sudden all these other people are just like that. So we
Wow.
bonded. It's a very wonderful thing, bonding with like-minded people in that way. Some of my very closest friends are also swimmers. We have that in common.
It's fantastic. And you're a member in good standing of the South Florida Writers Association.
Yes,
Uh, you might
yes.
talk a little bit about your connection with the group or what you enjoy about being a member.
Well, Carla Albano is also a member. She wrote Soul of a Swimmer, and she's a dear friend of mine. She told me about it and suggested I come to a meeting, and I loved it. The different characters there, and I thought it was the right place for me. You know how some situations just feel right? That felt right. And I knew I was writing this book, and the God took my arms, but he gave me this gift, which is a quote from Abbas.
Oh
That's his
wow.
line. He said, he's religious, he's Muslim. He said, well, God took my arms, but he gave me a gift. I went, there's a title of your book.
Yeah.
You just hear it. So you were asking
Inspiring.
about why the South Florida writers, it gets more valuable every time I go to a meeting. I learn things, I make contacts there. And what it does is it motivates me to write more. I can't just sit and rest on laurels. Oh, I wrote a book. Oh, I had it published. Okay, what have you done now? What are you doing now? Well, now I'm motivated to do this next project, to do this Broward People book or blog, however I'm going to orchestrate that. Because when I go to the writers' meeting, I have something to contribute if I'm working on something. Otherwise, I'm just the audience.
Yeah.
I want to
Great.
contribute. I like the group. I think the group is very valuable, very valuable.
Great. And anything, Anita, that we haven't talked about you want to address or anything you want to, as long as we got the cameras on
Well,
recording?
one of the things, I talk about the book a lot, and I usually talk to writers groups. And what they always ask me is about, well, give us some ideas about writing a book that if we do our own book, how would you do it? And how come my book gets so much attention? It's sold probably 300 books on Amazon already.
Great.
While I was in Paris, Florida State ordered books. I mean, 100 books to do a convention for disabled students. Writers group ordered 25, 30 of them at a time. I've sold a lot of books. And one of the reasons, of course, is that it's a very timely topic and it draws from a huge audience because we have a swim team that has 403 members on it.
Wow.
And so the connections through that, I've been able to do that. So there's other people who written books and like they sold 10. And it's not that, oh, I'm a great writer, and they're not, has nothing to do with that. My subject matter is more universal. And that's why I've sold so many of them. And that's why I get all these speaking engagements. I have tons of them. I have 20 of them. It's amazing.
Yeah, you're living the
Amazing
dream.
enough so that I had 2 on one day and I had to say I couldn't do the second one. It's amazing to me. I also let people know what I was doing. And I think as a writer, you have to let people know that you're a writer. I don't mean tell them you're a writer. You have to show you're a writer. Offer to write somebody's wedding vows. Everybody at that wedding is going to think, wow, these are great. That's how you get people to know about it. Ask your favorite restaurant if you can write their menu for them. And make a great menu. People want to know who did that. I've gotten all kinds of things that way, just from letting people know, but not talking about it. Nobody wants to hear a blowhard talking, oh, I'm a writer. So what? But if they see something you wrote as an advertisement, it gets attention. I wrote all the advertising for this book. I mean, tortured by misfortune and blessed beyond my wildest dream. The unlikely story of how an armless Afghan boy became a world champion swimmer. I wrote that so that when you go on Amazon, it's not something someone slapped together, something I wrote and cared about. And I think that makes the difference. For me, I'm terrible at computers. You think you had a hard time with Zoom? I wouldn't even touch that. Terrible at, and I thought, oh, I have to learn computers to do this. No, you don't. Well, you can write on a computer. That's going to make your life easier. But for me, I have a loose leaf. And all the things I needed to do this book were in a loose leaf, like I had in 7th grade. And I could just go to that section. Right, right. I just went to that section and did it. And rather than sitting there being intimidated by computers, and it's like, oh, what's the point here? Just do it like a loose leaf. And that made a huge difference for me. The other thing is to write about things I cared about and people I cared about. When I met Abbas, I really cared about him. Here, this coach had written us a weekly note. He writes a weekly newsletter to us. We're getting a new swimmer. He's got no arms and he wants to be in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. It's like, what? So the first day I watched him swim. I was fascinated with it. I cared about that. You know, people say, oh, you got to write about this person because they're famous or that person because they're famous. That doesn't make them interesting. So I'm always on the lookout for new people to write about. And there's no shortage of that. I'll always have material.
Are you open to saying on here? Is there an email address where people can reach you if they want to be, if they have someone, if they have a tip for you, or
yeah, of
do you know how to
course.
do
I
it?
mean, I
Okay.
don't have the blog up, but I
Okay.
just
Okay.
have my email. Sure, I'd love
Okay.
that. Mitch is back, MITCHZBACK @gmail.com. The blog was my retirement project. I mean, after 26 years at Channel 7, I couldn't see myself just, doing nothing. So while I was at Channel 7, I was collecting information to do this blog and all the contacts that I had at Channel 7. So I started doing it the next week. And that really helped. I think it helps to research it. I mean, this story was like a news story, so you needed research. But I think any story needs a research, even if you're doing a love story that happened. Well, where did it happen? And what's that place like? Bringing those people to life. I think no matter what you're writing, it needs research. It needs,
Definitely.
it
Definitely.
needs, we need to see where that is and, you know, what you're doing with that. You know, I'm not a guru. I'm not a writer's guru. I mean, this is art. It's not a math equation. So there's rules, but you don't really have to follow any rules. You are your own rules. And writing is it's not about fame or cash. It's not even about cash or social climbing or meeting people. It's about that passion is you've got that story to tell. And if you have that, the rest of it just comes. The rest of it finds you. You don't have to find it. It will find you. And that is what happened. I mean, beyond my wildest dreams too. And writing out of order. A lot of people want to do everything chronologically. And this lended itself to chronology, but let's say you're doing a romance novel. Some work on different parts as they come to you. And then you string it together at the end. You put it together at the end. What also helped me was to have paper and a pen with me at all times. And I have an iPad mini, and I would carry that around because when you find something and you have some time, you just do it. You do it right then. So that helped me. And also a lot of warm-up writing. You know, I didn't just wake up in the morning and write. I answered emails. I wrote reviews on something I bought on Amazon. That's writing. And it gets
that's true. That's true.
That's the warm-up. That's the warm-up to doing it. And those help me a lot. Those help me a lot. And things I would collect, like writers groups. I think writers groups are great. People say, oh, that's a waste of time. I don't think it is. I think it's really, really rich to have other writers around and hear what they do and have them see what you do.
Great. Well, Anita, thank you so much, and congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
Encourage you all to read it. It's available at Amazon, bookstores
Yeah,
everywhere.
it's on Barnes and Noble and
Barnes
Amazon,
and Noble.
some of the second sellers. But I also have a box of them sitting in my closet, like everybody that has.
Okay. So come if you come to the South Florida Writers Association meeting, Bugger, maybe she'll bring you a
Sure,
book.
yeah, I have them in the trunk of the car. In the car
Great.
trunk, so I always have them. So I hope I answered questions for you
Yeah, no, you did a great job. Thank you so much for the interesting reading, and thank you everyone for watching this.
Thanks a lot.